Mhm. Yeah, but it's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It usually turns green.
Green is off.
Shortly. Note this meeting has been properly posted by the clerk, so we are prepared to proceed. A moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll start by reviewing, drawing your attention to the minutes from July 14th. Determine if anyone has any corrections to the content of those minutes. If not, those minutes will stand as posted.
We, I think omitted from the minutes was a change to the bylaws that happened at about 42 minutes in on the video. So we should correct that.
What is the change?
The change was to adopt committee member responsibilities for one of the CJCC formats that was provided. And I believe I made the motion. As I was listening to the video, I'm not sure who it was. It may have been Mr. Sager who made the second. Yes.
I can double check that. If you catch that in the future, can you just let me know how to tell me that?
I didn't notice it until last night.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other corrections to the minutes from July 14th? We'll make those adjustments then to those minutes. Then turning to our first agenda item, I will both thank and welcome Attorney Stern as our coordinator to address us with regards to a discussion on key questions to be answered by data. Attorney Stern.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. Right, I wanted to this morning take just a little bit of time to lead you through a discussion that I think is hopefully going to be very interactive and very productive as we plan for the future of this organization. The CJCC strategic plan, as you know, commits this council to using data to guide its work, identifying key questions and selecting at least 5 initial key performance indicators, and establishing a regular reporting process with particular attention, of course, to behavioral health and pretrial compliance. The purpose of this discussion that I'd like to lead this morning is to agree on a manageable and prioritized list of CJCC generated key questions that will hopefully guide the subcommittee's data inventories and develop proposed key performance indicators to go along with those things. What we're essentially doing this morning is a questions before measures approach. Key question, for example, states what the council wants to understand, while a performance measure is what we would call a specific, consistently defined data point used to help answer that particular question and track any changes over time. One key question, of course, may require several data points. And the CJCC this morning hopefully will generate those questions. Hopefully the immediate output of this meeting today will result in like I said, a prioritized list of the questions that you generate this morning in our discussion, potential key performance indicators as well. And then following the session, once we've identified those things, then the behavioral health work group and the pretrial compliance work group will use those questions to inventory existing data, I'd like to think, assess definitions and collection practices across agencies, maybe identify any gaps in the system, and of course, recommend data points and reporting measures that then will come back to the full CJCC for action. So that's sort of how I see this thing shaking itself out this morning. The session is intended this morning to cover a system-wide information needs and of course, identify the council's priority areas as we've indicated. Of course, we know the council is seeking to understand the operation of the local criminal justice system here in Washington County, the people moving through it, for example, outcomes, emerging trends, and so on, pressures, coordination needs, and of course, a central focus on what decisions the council here needs to make and what information will help you make those decisions as you do your work. Again, let's talk a little bit about some definitions before we get into the discussion. Again, a key performance indicator is what I'd call a specific and consistently defined data point, which will be used to help you answer the key questions that you identify. You must consider whether there's also, I think as part of this discussion, I'll keep track of the questions. I think one of the ways that we can do this, I have no PowerPoint today. There's no whiteboard, nothing. This is just a good old fashioned discussion and we'll take some notes on it as well. I will try to keep track as we go around the table of what questions you think should be answered or asked rather. And also important in our discussion this morning is to understand that we're not here to get the answers today. We're not here to find those solutions today. What we're really going to do is brainstorm on some questions that you want then ultimately the CJCs to address or answer. This will help us identify what work the subcommittees need to do so the subcommittees can start their work and come back to you. And one of the things we want to make sure is that by starting the process up here at the CJCC and directing downward what you want answered, you keep the subcommittees focused, you keep them from going too far astray, and you keep them actually on task. So when they come back with the information, it's exactly what it is that you're looking for. And again, like I say, we're not here to answer those questions today, but to identify those questions and then data points as well, if possible. Does that make sense to everybody so far? I wrote myself a little script because I didn't want to forget things and I didn't want to have a sort of a meandering presentation for you this morning. One of the things I think that you may also want to consider this morning as part of these data points and part of these key questions is the topic and it's of whether or not perhaps even a fifth branch of the circuit court might assist in any way possible. And I wanted to also put that in your mind. I know that's something that's being talked about and bandied about a little bit. And I thought although it's not on the agenda for a formal discussion, we haven't really kicked it around the table too much. I think in the big picture, that might be something that you want to perhaps consider as you're talking about what the key questions are and how you answer those key questions and what data you might need to help decide if in fact that's a place you want to go. All right. Ground rules, if there are any this morning, focus on the questions that we need answered, not on the solutions, not on the programs, and not on the metrics. All right. So again, we're going to start out by trying to put together a list of questions. And I think one of the ways we can do that is sort of just open up discussion and go around the table and ask those questions. And I can take notes on them, throw them out there. And then once we feel we've exhausted that particular discussion on that for that particular subcommittee, we can go back and look at the questions again and decide whether or not amongst those questions you've come up with, there are things that are most important to answer and sort of identify which of those questions, once you've had a chance to discuss them, would be the ones you really want to focus on and send down to the subcommittees. So I think at this point, we might want to start out with just what are the system-wide questions you want answered, rather than getting into the behavioral health subgroup and pretrial compliance subgroup. Maybe there's some overarching questions you think the CJCC needs to answer in general. Maybe you don't, I don't know. But I wanted to throw that out there as maybe the first, I guess, area of consideration. And with that, I think I would throw it perhaps to the chair to lead that particular discussion to go around the table and see what questions, what information you think the CJCC in the big picture should answer. And of course, part of this too is you want to stick to the priorities you've maybe already sort of identified, but there may be other things that come out today as well. So with that said, system-wide questions. What do you think the CJCC needs to address in that area? I'll throw it out there. So what is the pretrial recidivism rate, and what was the other question, Andy? Pretrial detention rate, okay. Now, what do you mean case processing?
Who does the case? Which part of the system for case processing? Cases start, with law enforcement, then they move to the DA's office, then they move to the courts. Disposition?
So from filing to disposition? How about something like, I took a few notes down here too as well to maybe spur things along a little bit. What about things like where are you seeing delays? Where are you seeing recurring contacts? What resources might be most taxed? Things like that. Any thoughts in those areas? Or maybe that's the question. I don't know.
But I would say that am thinking about is I also think that we just don't even know basic data. I don't even know how many arrests we have in Washington County. I don't know how many people are in our jail at any given time. I'm sure nobody can know how many chapter 50 we do. Those types of things, I think could be a good starting point.
So foundational information, just about the system in general, arrest rates, number of cases that come through the system, jail population, things of that nature. Okay. Mhm.
To that point, trends over time sometimes tell you what trajectory those issues are trending in, and then changes in crime trends over time tell you what concerns are emerging or have shifted.
Fall in that category, but I think we just should figure out how many of those arrests and convictions residents of Washington County rather outside arrests.
On your side, probation, parole, that kind of thing, you're kind of getting these individuals as they, I don't say come out of the system, but transition to a different phase of the system. Are there things you would like to know about, the people that end up under your supervision and things that would help you better perhaps prepare or manage your work that the CJCC could assist with?
Yeah, it's a really loaded question.
I know, I bet it is. That's the point.
I would say takes all cases in the courtroom post conviction, but I do feel like a decent amount come out on supervision. I think that some of that internal data can come from the department, but often we see individuals that are already on supervision committing new crimes, and then that's how our re-entry process kicks back in. Individuals get revoked, or they set a jail term as a response. Or take some of those examples, but I think maybe pulling the data from individuals that are already given that second chance to be on supervision rather than taking a sentence.
So does that go to Andy's recidivism rate, sort of? So you would think that might be something too you'd like to know is, and that might be data you have, right? I mean, you may know how many people that are under supervision that end up being revoked, and that would be an important data point probably to have, and then to figure out why that's happening. And if there are things within the system that can address that to head that off, perhaps, right? Okay.
Recidivism was brought up a couple of times, but I'd be really curious about what actually is impacting that recidivism. Like I can say that our G program, jail affects it positively. That's just one aspect of it. I'd like to know what actually is impacting it.
causes. So again, that gets back into the system as to perhaps gaps in services, places where there are shortcomings that maybe could prevent some of that or address some of that ahead of time, perhaps. Okay. Maybe that goes to behavioral health. That subgroup perhaps would address some of those questions. Pretrial compliance, maybe not, but certainly that's an interesting question perhaps too, is what's causing it and how much of that is related to mental health, substance abuse and things like that, right?
What's the description of that recidivating population? Combining gap. Information from UFC, G1, which is important. We'd be able to get a much more comprehensive picture. To do much to describe the difference between the population that recidivates versus the population that doesn't. Beyond one system that is meant to cover the health. So that's a question.
Julie had also talked about just foundational information, just wanting to know just population in general, number of arrests and things of that nature, so forth. In terms of that information, how do you think that'll help you, or what would come from that you think would help you identify gaps in the system or things the CJCC could address? Where would you use that data, do you think?
Understand the depth of what we're doing. And I feel like, without data, a lot of decisions that we've made have been sort of what we think or how we feel about things. It's either very started with, oh wow, I think but then another piece would be like, well, you might feel like something that's an issue. And then the data, it's like, oh, it's actually a really small number. So I think it would help us as we start doing our priorities for work groups to help us decide what we're going to go. Because again, in our work group, we talked about a lot of the things we're starting to hanging fruit was the word I used I heard yesterday. And they're heavier, right? So we want to make sure we're focusing on right. And you have this really heavy grip. And it's really small. You don't necessarily spend the time.
So we talk a little bit about the subcommittees, and what that might result then is subcommittees meeting initially, setting out on the course of gathering that data, then coming back to the CJCC with data, with that important foundational information, and then from there, almost assigning tasks to the subcommittees based on that data. Would that be kind of what you envision?
Yeah, or we proposed 5 things, right? And we have some data alongside it. We might have to prioritize those.
I think another data point that would be of value would be understanding some of the most costly services that are being offered to populations in our county, and then what the N is for those populations. While we often look at a small N as being it can be viewed as then being insignificant when the cost factor associated with it is very significant. That may cause you to look at the issue slightly differently. And I wonder what the relationship is between the N and the cost factor for individuals that may be heavily taxing resources from multiple agencies in the county. And that may be multiple data points, but an element of understanding the costs of some of those services or responses would also be appropriate to focus on driving down those costs as associated with this population.
Mhm. Cost of services. Yeah, one person can be $1 million a year. We were having a conversation like that, literally $1 million to put somebody in a facility. And where does that come from? And, you know, how do you, I mean, what's the end game, right? It just goes on and on and on. I mentioned a little bit about a key question might be, I started off the conversation a little bit about analyzing whether or not fifth branch might be appropriate in all of this. And maybe that's in the larger picture, the question is what services are you missing, or what things could maybe be put in place to address these gaps, right? So.
That happened. Are there that county's jurisdiction is the state uses the branches, the county? All the counties have it. And we're asking that question, is there that works about it?
You would imagine so, right? Yeah. I mean, just like in the DA's office, they determine how many assistant DAs is appropriate for a particular jurisdiction based on population, other things. You know better than I do, Barry, but, right?
Yeah, and I know is it 10 years, Judge, there's analysis, statewide analysis done on circuit court branches.
Yes.
And that's what just recently came on. That's what's been driving the discussion, potential fifth branch, but yeah, we have it every year. Department of Administration at the state level does an analysis on district attorney's offices and how they cost.
Mm-hmm.
We get into that, there's a fact everyone in the neighborhood, not the court, that's the DA's office, that's the district attorney's office, that's my jail.
Yeah, clerk of courts. Yeah, everything. Right. That's why I raised it as part of a key question. That is a big issue that could potentially affect everybody, but may address things like pretrial compliance. It may address things like behavioral health and gaps in services and things like that. Are we missing something because the courts are overburdened and unable to allocate resources, you know, in the manner that it would like to or would best serve the population? And so, although, like I said, I don't think this panel has had that in-depth discussion yet. And maybe it's something the county doesn't want or need. But on the other hand, I thought if we're setting the subcommittees off on their work today, I would be remiss if I didn't at least throw that out there. Something perhaps that would be one of the key questions that this panel might want to consider, because we're not limited today to anything but than what our imaginations tell us, right? Whatever it is that this CJCC wants to address, today's kind of the day to figure out what are those questions, how do they fit into our priorities, and then what's that data that we need to bring that information back to the CJC for recommendations and so on. And we're lucky enough to have a county supervisor and the county executive on the panel who know much about the budgets for the county and where these resources can be funded from and so on. And so I think it's an important discussion for you all to have.
And to that point, yeah, it is important. It is important that all the different branches and different groups function appropriately, but we dare not leave out the taxpayer either. But, you know, yeah, it'd be nice to have a lot of stuff. Everybody wants stuff, right? And some of it really is necessary to function even at an acceptable level. But we do have to figure out the difference between wants and needs, and any data that we can have that would help support finding that answer, I think is necessary. But as we go through that, yeah, there is, it's amazing the emails you get and the perspectives that some of our constituents have. And obviously you don't get emails from any but the most dedicated advocates for their position. But as we consider all this, we have to remember we don't exist in a vacuum. The state has an effect, what the state's willing to fund. And then what are we willing to fund? So there's just a lot of moving parts, but yes, this is the place to start the discussion.
And the questions you identify doesn't mean that those are things you're going to act upon. You're gathering data, you may decide that's not something that we can address, or it's not a priority, or maybe it is, and maybe allocate resources one way or the other. Point is today is to throw these things out there, let the subcommittees go gather data, come back to you and let you know what they found, and then go from there and hope guide the future path of the CJCC. Let me recap a little bit where we're at, okay? Some of the things that came up so far. In no particular order. So the CJCC would like data from the subcommittees that would be foundational in nature. We're talking about arrest rates, these are just examples, Chapter 51, jail population, maybe total number of cases, and maybe within that umbrella is how long it takes cases to get through the system. Maybe those things kind of go hand in hand. So foundational information. We're talking about pretrial detention rate. We've talked a little bit about recidivism, the number of people that are in the system, they've gotten through the system, I should say, at least to the point where they're post, let's say, conviction, but yet they end up back again, or sometimes with new charges. What's the rate on that? Maybe that again falls under foundational information. Maybe that's ultimately the key here, is that you need to know those things before you decide what it is ultimately you have to address. The cost of services, that's come up. What services are available? What does the county have at its disposal, and what are the costs associated with that? Maybe what services would be required as a result of that information, or you think we could at least explore. Again, doesn't mean those things are going to be put into place, but at least things you could take a look at and decide. Maybe there are recommendations ultimately that come out of the CJCC that make their way up to the county boardroom here for consideration at budget time. Trends, that was another thing that came up. Trends in I guess I would say what types of cases that the courts are dealing with. That seem to have captured most of it so far. Yeah. Anything else on those points?
One thing I'd add, maybe it's not something you want to immediately dive into, but all of these same topics as it relates to juvenile justice
Mhm.
versus youth, and I would say less crime, more severe, or crime in general, that I think that'd be an interesting thing to see what the potential future of this system are going to impact those.
Trends in the juvenile cases, yeah.
We're gonna give a well-worded, granular speech about comparative data and trends, but.
Go for it.
You check off every. Test we had. Under. Demographics, who are the victims of crime.
Victim demographics. Mhm.
Should also be a focus then on service gaps related to that population as well. Especially under victim rights in that regard too, whether there are any issues that way.
Service gaps to victims,
Yes.
as well as to the population. Yeah, that is in the system, you bet. of these key questions, are there specific things that you think would be most appropriate for the behavioral health group to focus in on, or pretrial compliance subcommittee to focus in on? I leave that to you to decide. What do you think? Because what we'd like to do next, because I don't want to spend your whole meeting, there's other things to discuss here today, but I certainly would like to, I think before we're done with our discussion, have some sort of assignments for the subcommittees as to what data, and maybe some of it overlaps, I don't know. But there are certain things you think would be best suited for one group versus the other. I know we have the chairs of those committees at the table today. So we focus next perhaps on what data you think would help you answer those questions and who should gather that for you.
Point of clarification, you had asked us about system-wide questions.
Sure.
Are you asking us for, are you asking us for behavioral health questions or?
Well, we could do that too. I mean, it sounds like the discussion, although that my intention was overarching, it sounds like we're kind of getting all of that is kind of coming to the table. If there's things specific to the other subcommittees and other, yeah, let's talk about those. Let's throw those out there too while we're at it. Sure. I originally thought, well, we could do it in segments, but we're having a kind of a free-flowing discussion this morning, so let's keep it going. What do you think? The key questions so far, are there things that relate directly to behavioral health or pretrial compliance that we haven't addressed yet that are key questions you think you'd like answered in those areas that haven't been addressed by the other topics so far we've discussed? And if so, what? Start there.
Other complaint, whether
And that's what caveat to that, the way it's reported, because there are calls that come in that are really crisis. But there could be domestics that the underlying issue is the mental health issue that maybe not get it to. So it's a starting point, but it's not active. Unless you disagree with you. Sure. Very pressing.
Is there data currently collected at the dispatch level of how, what percentage of calls are deemed to be mental health, what percentage are, is that data collected?
So again, kind of along that same line, you have somebody that self that you call, they're going to give those types of things. That's the main focus of the concert.
This is admittedly off topic, as AI tools develop, and I'm afraid of how much it would cost. But it would be interesting to track dispatch calls and have the data to figure out what percentage of those are. Just as an intellectual exercise. I'm not sure it's appropriate for this committee, but it would, at some point it would help us figure out what's going on.
Around one, some treatments and voluntary, productivity for staff, follow-ups, cost for placements, cost for hospitalization, cost for long-term CPRF, tons of data for outpatient clinic. Obviously, we don't use our the conversion programs probably have the highest level of data that exists in the county. That sort of tells you, right, who's eligible and who's in the program and all of those sort of things. So, I mean, we have lots of like process data, but it's foundational. To get people exposed to what's happening.
We talk a lot about mental health issues, but one of the things that I'm sure is also involved is AODA issues. It seems like AODA and mental health, it's like a thread that runs through the entire caseloads that we all see, right? It seems like it's one thing or the other. That'd be maybe something else to try to, I guess, wrap our heads around, is how much of that is affecting what you see in the systems that you're involved in, and are there gaps in those services anywhere, and data and information that we could gather that might help figure out, are there places we could strengthen that kind of care?
Could you please define AODA for this novice?
Oh, drugs and alcohol issues, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if we're talking about behavioral health, we should always be thinking about. Most people who have a substance use issue are co-occurring.
But the problem is then when, how you track them once they become represented by an attorney, because that's going to give anything, right? Or anything after any drug and alcohol until the second thing ends up. You know.
Taking a step back from the conversation, from my perspective, it makes me wonder, at what point in the system are these substance use or behavioral health, behavioral health, because it's substance use and mental health issues identified, and who's identifying them? You talked about starting a dispatch, but then you have an officer on the scene, then maybe you have an arrest, then maybe you have a referral to the DA's office, who maybe forms an opinion, who then maybe charges a case, then ends up in the court. You know, there's so many assessment points along the way. And then where, if any, are there any interventions, if any, are occurring that at any point are cost effective? You know what I mean? But I'm just wondering, at what point are those system assessments made, and who's making them?
I would say mostly the attorneys. They're criminal defense attorneys, because at some point when people can get through the system, you said, like, you're not going to get them until they get to me, then I have to assess whether or not they're competent to go and to, you know, because again, if you're saying, okay, you arrest them for disorderly conduct, for screaming at a clerk, then are they willing to cooperate with their attorney? Because and then the ultimate assessment, if you're talking like consumer components, it doesn't have to be good there. Decide whether or not you're competent to the judge, work with the DA, work with me, and therefore then it becomes very difficult to work.
It's an interesting point. Who's identifying it? System identifying.
Well,
We're saying that this is important.
well, if they do something for it, it's not like nobody can do anything about it. You know, if there's a competent or a judge or yeah, in the courtroom.
That's sort of the underlying issue or concern, right? Is that We live in a free society, we can't force people to do something unless we have a justification for it, so we can't, within the DA's office, force anyone to get mental health treatment or AODA treatment, unless or until we've been capable of resolution, or they're convicted, they're placed on probation, and then it can be required under probation. So there's this gap, right, where nobody can really force someone to get treatment, even if all of us around this table that look at the case, identify that there likely is an issue. And what the answer to that is, I don't know. I mean, that's part of the society we live in.
Circling it back to the conversation about data from my thought process in making that comment was to say, there may be individual points of data when you look at the continuum that are being collected by those respective agencies and those touch points. Perhaps it's dispatch. I'm not sure if the DA's office collects data about cases that that the office subjectively forms an opinion have these issues, but maybe you do. Maybe the public defender does. Maybe the jail has numbers with regards to individuals that have those diagnoses by way of the medical team. But those data points may form some understanding as to the percentage of population and how many of them overlap in those touch points to better understand where the best system touch point is to identify this population and how frequently they're going through that particular touch point.
As I listened to everybody and I was taking some notes here, this is what I've kind of picked out as I think the overarching key questions. Because I think these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things probably encompass all the other things, the discussion points you've had this morning. But first one I come up with is the foundational information, arrest rates, so on and so forth. We discussed that. Trends over time in the system. Cost of services, which may include also the types of services available. So services available, gaps in services, and victim demographics. Those seem to be the overarching, I guess, key questions. Then we've talked a little about behavioral health and some of those questions that you've identified, at least in that topic, we can talk about pretrial compliance as well, seem to be geared more toward the data that you would want to gather that will help you hopefully address some of the key questions like gaps in services, trends in the system, which may include recidivism rates and so on. If that seems to capture so far what you think you've done, that's kind of what I've been hearing as I stand here today. Does that so far sound right?
Just to expand the scope of demographics.
Right. Yep. Offender, victim, juvenile information. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is a fraction of people that get placed on supervision, but part of our intake assessments agents ask those questions. Were you using alcohol or drugs at the time of the current offense? And when you convicted them? Was it opioid-related offense? Are you currently in treatment for alcohol or drugs? Have you ever taken formal treatment prior to this conviction? Would you benefit from treatment for AODA-related offense? I mean, so the department would have data on that for that population. Obviously, not every case that was reported is placed on supervision. But I think if we were looking for some kind of data regarding AODA matters, I would think the department would provide. Maybe be better off than looking on, or each agency to make a prediction or return. I would say more often than not, it's pretty clear agents are ready to support prediction. They're going to tell that some of them are equal, so if they come in their agent's office and they're like, the agent's going to change that answer, the yes or no. So you can make a drug related plan at a certain point in time, they say, okay. I think other agencies supports that decision, but I think that'd be a really good starting point to pull that down for those cases that are substituted. That is what.
Thank you.
So like one thing I'm wondering is, if it also also would be a good exercise for each area or system to sort of identify what if we really want to know things. The sheriff, she says, you know, if we get this data, but they don't. Because we might want to know something. Right, like, so, because we all know we have to put stuff in, that's not always easy to figure it out. And so it could be final exercise to construct because then that can help us answer the question. What would it take to get more quantitative data? Example again, where we, you know, we had invested a little bit of, you know, grant dollars to be able to have some, develop a report to.
And the key question areas that we've identified this morning really do probably overlap, and probably both subcommittees would have things to contribute data-wise to those overarching questions. So knowing what those things are as you leave the room today, the subcommittees may be able to have those discussions. Okay, we know what the CJCC wants. What can we give them? What can we give the group that will help answer those questions? So it may be up to the subcommittees once you get together to try to figure out what the data points really are, because those committees will know better than probably we do sitting here today. So maybe that's the real task today, is to identify those overarching questions, and then the subcommittees get together and figure out how do we answer these things. And there may be things that maybe questions that both committees are going to address and answer. They have data that's specific to, you know, to their roles in those answering those questions. So I didn't want to take the whole meeting and all the time. We've been about 45 minutes or so into this thing. We can go as long as you want on this, but I know there's some other things to discuss. What else do you want to throw out on the table today about this? What do you think that the subcommittees, those of you who are chairing subcommittees, what do you think, what direction would you like from the CJCC, I guess, is the next question, to help you answer these key questions? And did we miss anything yet, do you think? Do you think we've comprehensively sort of got the mission figured out, or are there things that you want to consider?
I think this was incredibly helpful, Brad. We haven't met yet on the pretrial compliance group. That was mainly because of my schedule over the last 3 weeks or so. But frankly, I have a draft charter that I'm planning on presenting, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. That frankly I might change before I get to the pretrial compliance discussion. So, no, I mean I agree. I think one of the concerns going into the pretrial compliance work group, at least for me, was what direction does CJCC actually want this group to go, and what are we actually going to be addressing? So I think even just having the work group address these foundational questions, I think will be help that we can then relay back to CJCC, which might assist us in further what direction the CJCC puts the work group to go. So, you know, certainly the foundational questions on arrests in Washington County, how many cases were filed, crime trend, that certainly is assisting me in what direction, at least preliminarily, the work. So this was helpful.
What I can do after the meeting is send a list of what I think we've identified here today to the CJCC. I'll send it blind copied, so we're not having a meeting without a meeting. And you can respond to me directly, but not to each other if I've missed anything or whatever. Try to, again, focus what we learned here today, what we identified today, and then the subcommittees can start doing that work. I guess the question is, when I know the pretrial compliance group has not met yet, but what's a reasonable amount of time to gather some of this information? One of the concerns I know is that if the CJCC is meeting, but it's waiting for the subcommittees to do its work, we hate to see the larger group get together and just stare at each other as they wait for results. Maybe you want to address what the expectations are in future meetings and when you want to get this information by. We're sensitive to time, everybody's time, just to get together, first of all, but second of all, also the time so that the work of the CJCC can meaningfully get underway. to answer these questions. So I throw that out there next. I don't know what you think about deadlines and timing and what's reasonable. Believe it or not, we're heading into the fall and the holidays are around the corner. So I don't know how you want to approach this, but I think we need to certainly have some, maybe not, at least, if not hard deadlines, at least some sort of focus as to when you want to get back together with this information. So it's not just out there in the wind. So I leave that again to you to discuss, but I think it's important before we're done here today to know what the expectations are reasonably.
Well, I'll say the month's turnaround time is difficult. I mean, frankly, even just this last month for me, I mean, I'm not saying I have attempted homicide trials once a month, but when more significant cases come up in the office, or when we had to make multiple hirings this last month, and that's just me. And I know everyone else is incredibly busy. I'm months turnaround time for potentially collecting a significant amount of data from each agency. I mean, that's going to be difficult. And I agree. I don't want to come back to CJCC meetings every month and say, oh, we're still working on it. And we sit here and stare at each other. But I understand that, you know, some folks wanted to move things along more quickly. I can appreciate that. It's oftentimes very difficult to get things turned around in 30 days or less. So.
To that point, I'm not sure it's the purpose to have all the data extracted and neatly compiled and ready for a report, but I would expect that maybe a partial step would be identifying even if the data that we're looking for is available and how to get it. You know what I mean? So that might be, and don't want to put any of the committee chairs on the spot, but that might be an interim step, right? Where do we go for this data? What can we get? And then the second step might be actually compiling. So maybe a little research first and then reporting afterwards. Does that make sense?
It does. I would just add, and I would reiterate what Brad said, is that the work at the work groups takes time, right? Which I already just said it. That's why because we need time to actually do it. And so, but I do think that identifying the data that we have is not necessarily the responsibility of the chairs. I think it's something that each agency or organization of can do that. So I wonder if it is helpful to create something, I don't know, a form or if it's a spreadsheet or something that we could put together to say, here's the data we have, do we have a good report, what is it that we can look at? So that and then we compile that all together, and then that could be a good project for this whole group to go through it. So this is what we want to know.
Attorney Stern, could you remind the membership about who the county has as a resource for the CJCC to help assimilate data, analyze data, and host the data that's provided by members? You talked about this once before.
Or we have a gentleman upstairs, Elijah Dorr is his name, this is his forte, gathering and analyzing data. He does an amazing job. And he works in the budget office generally, but he's a jack of all trades. And I think all the departments have tapped him at one point or another to help gather data and then put it in report form and help us. Now, he doesn't analyze it, but he would compile it in such a way that he might be able to pull out trends. Dave, I think isn't he on your?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, Dave, you'll address it at your, okay. All right, but that's what I was, we have those resources is the point. The data is gathered to funnel it somewhere where certainly it can be, put together in a way that it be very easily presented to the CJCC. So we don't want to bring you a bunch of scraps of paper floating all over that you got to thumb through. We want to bring you something that, when it's all said and done, that you can look at and rely on and act upon.
So from Attorney Bratz's perspective, he would not be expected to compile data, put it in charts or anything like that at his end, correct? I mean,
No,
okay.
no, we'd get the information and then we would put it together. Certainly don't expect the chairs to sit in front of their computers and try to figure out how to put all that together. And to Supervisor Schwab's point, AI, we're starting to use that more and more here at the county. We have policies in place as to how we use that, and that's a fabulous tool for things like this as well. And we can certainly make use of those resources within the county. We have programs that we use that we're contracted with and so on that will make it very easy for us to do.
So I think what the coordinator is asking is whether the chairs have an idea as to when, from their perspective, it might be productive to come back with something of substance in response to the discussion that occurred today. I think that's what he's asking, is if you have a thought
Yes.
process in that regard, in light of what he's raised about where the CJCC is at with its work
Right.
and monthly meetings that are currently scheduled.
Will you go first?
Yeah.
The hope would be 60 days, that
Mhm.
we'd be able to provide some sort of substantive data to the DJCC,
Actual data or
or at least,
identified data? Or actual data? Some preliminary actual data?
Well, at least a meaningful status report. How about that?
we,
Because I would envision that the groups will get together and sort of assign those tasks, then to get together thereafter, maybe another month later, come back and here's what we've got so far. And it may be enough, it may not be enough, it may be that it just opens the door to more information you have to gather, but that would be, again, depending on the complexity of what it is you're trying to put together. 60 days, at least you would think you'd have at least some idea where you're at.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll hold on to that and table it for discussion as we get to farther down in our agenda then.
Sure.
Okay.
Can figure that part of it out. And again, like I said, I will email to the membership the system-wide questions. I think I identified 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 of them. And then if you want to tweak anything, let me know, but email just me directly, don't reply all. And then I can tweak some things and send it back out again. Make sure everybody is satisfied to let me know. And then the chairs can begin getting their groups together. And I would expect you'll see an email yet this week from me in a day or so, probably by Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your hard work with regard to that presentation and assisting us with that discussion.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Item B turns us to our topic of communications. Mr. Seeger?
Good morning, thank you, Your Honor. Couple of things, we do have the communications committee stood up. It is comprised of Dr. Whopper, Michelle Von Hayden, and Elisha Gore as the chief legal officer. Mentioned before, he is part of the EPA team, project analyst. So we do have some identifying questions that need to be answered from that work group. Is just verifying the finalized mission statement concretely, so that we know what we have to work with. And secondly, the current membership, as in the bylaws, it identifies 10 voting members. Last month, we believe we onboarded on 11. I see 11 here, so I don't know if that combines with the mission statement. Well, just want to get that clarification as we move forward. And I know at one point in time, we discussed some data sharing agreements. I don't know if that's still something we're pursuing amongst the group. So,
No, there was no agreement. It was a policy you adopted last time.
so with that being said, we do have several different examples that I can share with the group going forward, but we need some direction from the committee because we actually did stand up a website last October and it's been sitting private facing currently, but some of the examples that were provided are far better and more streamlined, provide buttons and things of that. Things of that nature, strategies, work. Lastly, speaking to data that we're collecting now, Elisha is spectacular in his position, having a SharePoint that we can upload all this information where everybody can view it and see it throughout. And lastly, I'm a big co-chair person, so I would entertain this council, to onboard co-chair for my communications committee. And I would, push forward a motion that we entertain that thought process, and I would recommend as, one of my communications, as the co-chair.
So motion on the floor from Mr. Seeger to have a co-chair for his committee, Andy Freeman. Any second? Any further discussion? That would be your discussion. Do you accept? Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Thank you for accepting that position.
And
Then we'll,
I will push that out. I'll give some examples to the entire committee so that you can verbalize your thought process on what that actually looks like. Some examples of the website itself. So we can make a decision on how those things look going forward. And when you want to make it public facing.
sounds good. So let's take that in the reverse order. I was making
I'm sorry.
notes about your feedback. Thank you so much for your report. So to come then would be sort of a website demo for the group to take
I
a
would
look
think
at,
that
or?
would be appropriate, like that.
All right. So at a forthcoming meeting, website demo for the group to take a look at, provide some feedback on and see what their comfort level is with the content.
Yes.
And then you indicated there's a possible thought process for data hosting on the site as well.
Yes,
Okay,
I would, for the committee members, as a SharePoint, right, where it's all housed and categorized, where we can all view it as we see fit, given the sensitive nature of all material.
you mentioned concerns or clarification needed about the mission statement.
Yes,
One of the comments that we had in our conversation last time was that our mission statement is included in the authority, purpose, and mission section of the bylaws. We did not take action on that last time to further define that out. Would the group be willing to allow the communications committee to attempt a shorter mission statement gleaned from that section for the website rather than have 3 paragraphs on the website? I'm confident that group can wordsmith that. Let's try that. I'm
Let's
seeing
try
heads
that.
nod. Let's try that as part of your demo rather than paste those 3 paragraphs or return to that topic, given the fact that we just discussed it last time. So that would perhaps be a workable solution, is to
you will bring
words,
it back to the council.
wordsmith that. And then clarification on the membership. Do you know which one you think was missing?
What was it, Andy, that we discussed? 10, 11? I see 11 on the city.
The bylaws have 11. I'm wondering if there was a prior version of the bylaws circulated for discussion way back in the beginning that had 10.
That's the one.
So
Any questions, comments?
Yes. Part of my committee. I'd love to just for the social interaction day, but it probably wouldn't be very useful for you for the work side.
Right.
No, my question was, as a practical matter, sounds like some of the websites you have are already developed. Do you see that might be available for the September meeting, as the data portion would probably get pushed out to October?
Yes, I think we'll be able to provide several examples for the council to review and consider.
Thank you.
On the agenda, it says September.
Which happens to be the day after Labor Day too, which we'll want to discuss as well. But September's achievable from your committee's
Most certainly.
perspective? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for the communications work group? Comments? Discussion points? Thanks very much for the report out and progress thus far. Julie, on behalf of Behavioral Health.
Yes, so, in your packet, we have completed our charter. And so and I'm asking for approval of that charter.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Any other discussion, comments, concerns?
In your, now that you've got meeting. I didn't get that. I get your, I'm not sure if I have yours.
The only one I see on the website is
There's three little dots.
They're next.
Inside.
Pretty secret.
thank you.
Any additional comments, discussion, questions regarding the charter? Monthly meetings?
Correct.
Appreciate the aggressive scheduling of that. Certainly been a committed group. All in favor? Oh,
To that point.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the charter passes. Thank you for your work in that regard.
But he has a gift.
Then turning to Attorney Bratz, who gave us a bit of an update. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's right. I apologize. Yes, sim mapping. Yes.
I just wanted to get a brief update on the SIM training that is, September third, fourth. I'm happy to report that we have 34 people, signed up, from a very, wide array of organizations and disciplines, hospital systems, school systems, corrections, court judge, our, homeless shelter, chief of police of West Bend, and some of our, nonprofits. We are still, looking for a few people to sign up. I don't want to call anybody out, but, they're here at the table. We do need some main, players to sign up, so, I did send out a reminder last week. I'll send one right after this meeting, so if you see my email, when you get back to the office, respond to it, please. Oh, and hope that you can attend, and if you guys can't attend, please, consider sending it out, if you personally cannot.
Thank you. Appreciate all the work that you've put into that sim mapping, which is on our strategic plan as one of our goals in the behavioral health priority. So participating in that and accomplishing it will be significant. Keep in mind that on the concept of timing, that is September 3rd and 4th, which is the Thursday and Friday before the holiday weekend. If I'm memorizing the calendar correct, and then we meet that next Tuesday if we follow our current plan. So we have a very tight timeline scheduled going forward with a lot of moving parts and work, which the committee chairs have pointed out, as did your coordinator as well, which will all be part of the conversation in just a moment. Thank you. Anything else then, Julie, from your committee? Thank you. Attorney Bratz gave us a little bit of a preview of his update. Anything additional that you would like to add as to pretrial compliance?
Mentioned about here, the Ms. Reichert and Attorney Turner helped get a meeting set up. The members on that work group that are here today should be receiving something soon. So hopefully meet within the next, couple weeks here, a few weeks. And, as I said, I mean, what Attorney Stern went through today was very helpful in that direction, so. That's all I have.
Thank you. So then Attorney Stern, in terms of the plan tracker that we have for the strategic plan, comments about next steps from your perspective and how that relates to the work of the subcommittees, any timing concerns about the next scheduled meeting, the SIM training, et cetera.
Well,
From your perspective as coordinator, what, if anything, do you have to share?
I think that I'm very, very pleased with the way the meeting went today, and I really feel like we're on track and on task. Obviously, the holiday coming, might throw some, speed bumps in the way a little bit as people take some time off as we bring the summer to a close, but, I think we're gonna be okay. I don't see any major issues, and if there are, it's not because it's a lack of work, or lack of effort on the part of the CJCC. If we have to adjust some deadlines occasionally, so be it, but I don't really think I see anything that's jumping out as a problem at this point, especially in light of what we did today.
Thank you. Then we're currently set to meet September 8th, which is the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Now that, not Memorial Day, Labor Day. Now that we are looking at calendars and that's upon us, it calls into question whether anybody expects to have any conflicts with that date, which would reduce our attendance below a meaningful level. Two, we've heard comments from our committee chairs as to their timelines and next steps. Three, we know when our SIM training is occurring. Is there any reason to expect a report out from Department of Justice for discussion that next Tuesday right away? I'm sorry, Julie? Any reason to expect a Department of Justice to have a report out? It would take 30 to 60 days for them to give you the materials from the SIM training, I'm assuming? Okay, so that won't be available immediately. The question is, do we have a meaningful agenda that is forthcoming for the September 8th? And do we have meaningful attendance for September 8th? That's what I'm looking to determine. In light of the comments from our committee chairs and everything else, I know we will have a communications update, at least as to the website, to discuss that could be available and expected to be available for September.
I would be absent that day.
And I would just add, because of the holiday, we're meeting the Mondays before, our CJCC, for the health worker, so because of holiday. So we will not have a meeting between now.
Options from, oh, sorry.
I'll be here. I don't know what, I don't know what we're gonna be discussing outside of communication.
Is there, pardon me?
If we cancel. But I'm biased because that's
I was gonna throw that out there as a motion. Skip a month. but
had we not. Friday.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
A second? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will strike the September 8th meeting then and meet in October. That accomplishes much in favor of the work of the subgroups and all the other activities going on with regards to the CJCC. Then that concludes our agenda for today. We will adjourn. Thank you so much for your work and discussion.